where do you live now?
I'm sort of based myself in LA. In the last year and a half I was doing a TV show there, Break, which was an Australian show but remade in America. That subsequently finished, so I'm still sort of based there, but now I've been offered quite a few things here, and so I'm trying to work out what to do.
How do you find yourself situated at the moment, career-wise?
I think things are better than they've been for a while in some ways. I've had a lot of work in the last three or more years, and a lot of really different, interesting things, sort of jumping from one thing to another, and then the television show, and I did a film last year, The Homesman, which is going to come out this year in America. So it's actually been good. In some ways, I think you go through stages as an actor. Like someone said once, it's sort of like every 7 years you kind of have to change up the roles that you kind of play. You get repositioned in a different way. You kind of hit a different age group. And I like the age group that I'm in, actually. I really like the roles that have been coming along for me, better than I liked the 7 years before that, I think.
Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
this film. How easily do American accents come to you now, given how many you've done? Do they still take work? Or do
Yeah, they still
from
take
you?
work. I'm not going to lie, they still take work. For this film, I actually pretty much stayed with American accent the whole time, like all day, every day from the moment I arrived in Brazil. I just used it all the time. I find the more I do it, it doesn't then sort of jar with me when I come to act. It doesn't suddenly sound like a foreign voice. I like kind of hanging with it all the time. Yeah, and there's still certain words that kind of make you stumble and things like that, but I'm better at doing it off the cuff than I used to be. It's taken a long time to get better at it.
Why this film?
I just love the script, and I was fascinated by these two women, and I found them so modern, and I found the whole idea of Brazil in that period so interesting. And I thought it was interesting to have a film that was about a same-sex relationship, but that it didn't dwell on the fact that it was a same-sex relationship, that was just accepted in the film. And I found that really refreshing, that it was really a love story between these two women. And I think that's the point that we should be getting to, where it's sort of, that's not, so outlandish or strange or anything for people. It's just the two people who are in love.
The dynamic that drives a relationship is the odd couple pairing between the two. One is super confident.
Yes.
And
charismatic and happy to be the centre of attention.
And then there's the character you play.
Yes, who's much more introverted and damaged and oh gosh, everything that's opposite to Lota, really. Yeah, and two very, very different cultures that they come from. Elizabeth Bishop is from that very East Coast American kind of culture, and Lota from that much more Latin kind of warm, fiery culture, and just so different.
Was the fact that it's a majority female cast in the film one of the reasons why you wanted to take it? Did that play into your reason to do it?
I don't think I sat there and said, oh great, it's all women, but at the same time I think because it was a majority of female parts, the female parts were so interesting. And I think as time went on, I realised that a lot of the characteristics that usually get given to the male characters got given to the female characters. So you got to be dealing with different issues than you normally got to deal with. I mean, dealing with, a lot of films are made about male artists, and a lot of male characters get to struggle with, justice or God or these kind of issues. And I felt like, we got to deal with bigger things than we normally get to deal with.
It certainly is progressive in that the fact that it's a same-sex relationship is not an issue in the film.
Yeah, it's not about how difficult it was in the 50s. That is kind of solved very elegantly for them. It's really much more about a love story over a long period of time and the different stages that relationship goes through. And also Bruno was very interested in the idea of someone who was sort of weaker in the relationship and one who was very strong, and then how over a period of time in a relationship that balance can completely go in the other direction.
It's also a very interesting film about functional alcoholism. Mm-hmm. And I'm very keen to know how big a factor that was in you wanting to make this movie.
That was something that scared me a little, actually, because drunk acting is kind of notoriously difficult and can be really indulgent, and I was interested with those things to kind of try and vary it as much as possible and have different stages, different types of drunk. And it was interesting because also speaking to Bruno at times, I was saying, oh, but here she's meant to be not drinking, so why is Lotta getting out the champagne? And he was saying, well, he felt that that's how it was then, that people would be like, don't be drunk, but here, have a glass of champagne and stop at that. Like, it was harder for really people to take it seriously. But in retrospect, what was interesting, I was doing this other film where I was playing someone who was mentally ill, who'd gone crazy, and that was one of Elizabeth Bishop's big fears. And I wondered if in some way, in retrospect, that the alcoholism was actually some form of self-medication, that her sort of extreme sensitivity to everything, and alcohol actually maybe kept her sane in some way.
I spoke with Essie Davis a short while ago and asked her why she thought television tends to serve women better than film does.
Yeah.
Firstly, do you agree with that observation?
I certainly agree with that in America, looking at American examples. Yeah, I do.
Why is TV better for women than film?
I think partially TV's better for film. TV's better for women than film because women really watch TV, particularly once women have children and things like that. It gets so much harder to get out to the movies. So, and there's also seen in the TV world as the ones who make a lot of the decisions for the family. So TV tends to try to capture that market and therefore try to write more interesting roles for women to grab that kind of female intelligent audience who are going to be deciding what their family does.
They're also stronger, more progressive.
But I would say that writing in television these days is just better generally. There's not many films that I read, certainly in America, that have the quality of the writing of the cable TV shows. They just aren't. It's like they say that cable TV in America is like the 70s film industry in America. It's sort of brave new world, uncharted territory. They're basically saying to people, go out and give us your most extraordinary idea, because that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for tame, safe things. We're looking for really dynamic TV. Yeah. And film is kind of, there's still great films around, but it doesn't have that energy overall, that whole kind of pulsing energy that it did a few years ago.
Why you haven't done more comedy? Love Serenade is still such a funny film.
I know, it is still
and
great.
Daydream Believer, if you can find it, you're so funny in that movie. Miranda Otto, why haven't you done more comedy?
I don't really know. Some of these things, it's just the way that your career goes. I mean, I have done bits of comedy over the years, but the kind of comedy that I'm attracted to, I did a film called Human Nature, which was comedy, Michel Gondry film. I love that. I've got a kind of a really offbeat sense of humour. I'm not so much a kind of sitcom person. I don't get that humour so much. But I like really unusual characters in strange situations. I like comedy that I don't see about to happen and then it happens. And not much of that, I can't find a lot of that. Like Love Serenade was, Shirley Barrett had such a particular voice and wrote such fabulous characters that I loved working on. It was so funny on the page, but there's not much that's like that out there. Same with Charlie Kaufman. He has an amazing and particular voice and writes really clear characters. You just really got to get out of your own way. The writing's so good.
Do you ever catch a little bit of Lord of the Rings signage just in your peripheral vision, or see like a passing image from that franchise and think to yourself, I'm part of that thing?
I have been in toy stores and seen the Lego and thought, oh, that was part of that. Yeah, no, I do sometimes catch myself on that, but I haven't actually seen it again since we first did it. But at some stage I'll sit with my daughter and watch it, but I still feel like she's probably just coming up to an age where she could watch the first one.
And did you get into the mythology of the Lord of the Rings?
Oh yeah, I loved that. I love working on things when you can just delve deeply, and the more you delve, the more you find, the more it holds weight. So to work on a book where he'd created such a world, and he'd created it to such an incredible degree, and to have the other books that you could also reference, like it was just so detailed. The more you read, the more you could find. I love that.
Did you know about all this stuff before the films, or was it the films that made you dive into it?
I was aware of that whole world, but I didn't sort of plunge into it as a teenager or anything, no. So it was great to I mean, that's a great thing in acting, is that you get to poke your toe in so many different areas and learn about things that you may not have ever come across.
Through My Eyes, outstanding performance, and an important miniseries in the correction that it was able to introduce into pop culture. Did you take on that role because it was just a good role, or, Miranda, was there a degree of conviction on your part that you believed she was innocent?
Oh, absolutely, I believed that she was innocent, yeah. And some of the things that came forward during the making of that mini-series were also enlightening to me. I mean, I kind of always believed that she was innocent. It seemed entirely possible to me that a wild dog could take a baby. You know, there was all that controversy at the time saying, oh, that couldn't possibly happen. But, you know, then there was evidence found that was squashed at the time of the case, that there had already been cases of such things, so of attacks from dogs and things, so from dingoes. So yes, I did go into it believing absolutely that she was already innocent, and then there was just so much stuff that they brought forward during that time that the writers, Simone and Tony, had found that just made it so clear. It was very moving to be involved in something like that and to work with Lindy and get to meet her and talk to her.